welcome to our American Cheese with the lovely Janet Fletcher webinar. And good morning to all of those that are joining us from America or whatever time zone you are in around the world. Do feel free to use the chat facility and the question and answers facility, please. Alice is here and she's going to be looking after the questions and answers, and we'll try and answer them as we go along. Otherwise, we can pick those up at the end. I am just going to do a quick update about the Academy of Cheese. For those of you that don't know so much about us, we're a not-for-profit organisation. We've got 4 levels of certification that we're aiming towards, from associate to master of cheese. We have launched level 1 in 2017, and we've now got over 2,000 level 1 associates. And we launched the next level, level 2, member in September 2019, just before the pandemic, and we had a couple of classroom courses, and we have now trained up to there's 96 people trained. So the ways you can study with us were traditional classroom courses which have now gone virtual, or e-learning. We've got 23 training partners now, which is very exciting. Many more joining us from all over the world. We teach the course in Japanese with our lovely Kanako, who you can see here, and we have we teach it in about to start teaching it in Russian. We teach it in Chinese and Portuguese and in Norwegian. So it's growing fabulous. It's amazing how the interest for cheese is across the world. Since the pandemic and there's no classroom courses, we have got 16 of those training partners now training virtually for us. So we're very pleased about that. Level 3 and Master of Cheese, for all you fans and all of you delegates and alumni that are joining us tonight, they are we're hoping to launch the core modules for level 3 in the late spring this year, so in April. Funds permitting, everything's tricky. Now we're back in lockdown again, so there we go. That's a little bit about e-learning, so you can learn online as well. I just visit our website. There's loads of information there, and I'd like to crack on and talk to Janet. So Janet, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm going to
thank you.
Stop sharing this for the minute, because I think it's much better to talk to you and see your lovely face. I am a big fan of Janet. She's one of my idols. And I came across her through talking to Mary Quick, who was inspired by the American Certified Cheese Professional certification that you have over there in America, which is mostly for mongers, isn't it? For cheesemongers.
Pretty much, yeah.
And those working in retail. And I buy the Culture Word on Cheese magazine, and I think you've written for those, haven't you?
Yeah, it's been a while, but I certainly wrote a lot of stories in the magazine's early days.
And then if you follow them, you always come across Janet's blog, a fantastic blog, Planet Cheese. Who could not go and see what that was all about? But Janet, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll have an intro to you, and then we can talk a little bit about the, history of American cheese as well.
Sure. Thank you, Tracey. It's just really an honor to be here to represent American cheese. I'm in California, in Napa Valley, about an hour north of San Francisco. And I'm a food writer by profession, and I kind of took a little sideline into cheese about 20 years ago. I still write generally about food, but mostly about cheese. And I just have found it such a fascinating journey. It takes me to places, both, just in my mind, and certainly when I travel, we've been to many cheese producing countries and met wonderful cheese people. And it's such a deep dive into history and culture and geography and passion and science. And I just feel like it's a lifetime journey. So I've written 3 books on cheese. As Tracey mentioned, I have a blog. If you don't already get it, I hope you'll sign up for Planet Cheese. You can find it on my website, which is janetfletcher.com. And it's free, of course, and once a week, and just a really quick read about something, some new discovery, new cheese, some politics of cheese.
I'm in awe that I'm absolutely in awe that you managed to do it once. You produce something on such a regular basis as well. Once a week is fantastic, and there's always
it's quite I'm a pretty. It's quite the pace. I've been doing it now for 6 years. So send me ideas.
Wow, you must have a massive folder of all the blogs, all the documents.
Yeah, all online, fortunately, all digital. So yeah, I mean, if you want to go, there is a blog archive if you want to go look up something I might have done in the past.
And what was your first book you wrote?
The first book was called The Cheese Course, and it was it came out more than 20 years ago, and I wrote it because I noticed that people were starting to get more interested in cheese in the US, and restaurants were starting to serve cheese courses, which they hadn't been doing. And they were really kind of merchandising the cheese to help sell it by putting it with a pretty salad or a special bread or an interesting condiment. So the cheese course was a bit of a, reflecting that trend. And it was a recipe book, things that you could make to go with cheese and make more of a course out of it. And then I wrote a book called Cheese and Wine, which is still in print, and Cheese and Beer, which is also still in print.
Fantastic. And we were just saying, we were trying to look, and I think Alice might, if we found it, we can put a link up in the chat for you where you can buy these books. Will you do a reprint of the cheese course then?
Probably not. It's
kind of, I suppose, 20 years.
Yeah, it had its life. It had a good long life for about 20 years. And now I think, I've got some other cheese ideas. I'm just finished a set of lectures, 10 lectures about cheese for Audible. And I'll be, in about 6 weeks, I'll be going into a studio to read them. So it will be an audio lecture series about cheese on Audible.
Oh, okay.
Available by late spring, I hope.
Fantastic. Well, let us know, because we would love to make sure the cheese community, Academy of Cheese is international, but we've got over 6,000 people now as members and as part of the community. So do let us know, because we can then push that out, because I'm sure there's lots of people that would want to listen.
Thank you.
So I have to ask the question all about COVID. I know you've got inauguration day today, but we're not going to talk about that, because everybody's trying to have a break from that and just have some cheese release. So in terms of how the cheesemongers, the cheesemakers, I think we've seen a lot of similarities with the UK, because I talked to you briefly during British Cheese Weekender. What's been, what's happening in now during COVID, and maybe what was the cheese trends before, or what was the cheese scene in America? Because there is a fairly bad reputation going back that American cheese is, sliced orange burger slices that goes on the top of a burger, and that's what it was about. And at the Academy, we're definitely wanting to bust those myths, really.
Yeah, I think, until COVID hit, the American artisan cheese industry, or specialty cheese, whatever you want to call it, was very healthy. It was growing. We had, many creameries thriving, many stores, retailers specializing in specialty cheese that were thriving. And COVID really dealt this terrible blow, as I'm sure it did in the UK, because all these people lost their restaurant accounts, and people were staying home. And when they did go out to shop, they wanted to buy something like a big hunk of, cheddar that they knew would last. So especially the soft cheeses were People who made soft cheeses were really suffering, and the restaurant thing was a big blow. I actually was, let's see, COVID really took off here in about mid-March.
Yes.
And by early May, everybody was panicking and sales had plummeted. And several of us who were, some people in the industry and some of us who were just kind of supporters, came together as volunteers to brainstorm about what we could do to help out these creameries.
Okay.
And we came up with this program called Victory Cheese. And I have a Victory Cheese bag here. Victory Cheese is a total volunteer grassroots movement. And the idea was to persuade retailers to put together a collection of American cheeses and call it their Victory Cheese collection and promote it and try to, push some sales for these creameries. And so I actually did 12 collections for iGourmet, which is an online merchant here in the US.
I've seen iGourmet.
Pardon me?
I've seen all iGourmet.
Yeah, they have they have a big online platform, and so they are very good at shipping. So I put 12 collections together, and in fact, the cheeses that I'm going to show you today are from from the Farmstead collection. So that Victory Cheese movement has really had impact. It has really helped push some sales out. And the other thing is that over the last months, creameries have figured out how to sell direct themselves to consumers. Yep. So a lot of creameries that did not have websites or did not have e-commerce on their websites now do. And consumers have gotten used to the idea of, buying online. Creameries have gotten kind of experts at shipping and logistics and figuring out how
which is a lot harder a very similar situation as happened here in the UK, but very much more difficult for you guys to ship because it's such a bigger country. What we found as well is it's been fantastic for the artisan cheesemakers because now anybody is local. You can buy local, the choice is massive. The choice of artisan cheese that you can now get access to or now aware and of access to is phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. You can have, if you're willing to pay the shipping, you can have cheese, huge, much more choice than you have at your local cheesemonger. Although I certainly hope people will go back to their local cheesemongers when we all feel safe to go out and shop a lot.
Yeah.
So, because we've lost, just very recently, we lost 2 major independent retailers, really prominent people who were just the best at what they did, and they could not make it through COVID. So I hope
was that in the Napa Valley?
No, one was in San Francisco and one was in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
Really leading mongers who
it's not easy. We've got Borough Market has continued and a number of the outdoor markets have continued. So we've got some traders that have carried on. The farm shops and delis have tried their hardest to carry on. We've seen people with the pin to pay, the credit card machines on broom handles so they can take your payment at 2 meters distance. We've seen it all.
Well, I've started doing a lot of virtual classes, of course, because I taught a lot in person before, and I've just been surprised at how successful they are. I mean, a lot of us are doing that because that's what we are able to do, and having this ability to ship cheese to people makes it possible. Yes. So, for example, I'm doing a series with Laura Werlin, who's another cheese authority here in California, and we call it Cheese O'Clock, and we've been doing it once a week with some breaks, and we use iGourmet to deliver, to get the cheese to people.
To get the cheese out, that's fantastic.
It's kind of opened it up to now I can have students, from anywhere in the U.S.
Yeah.
That's the silver lining.
Yes, that is, and it's very similar for us because the Academy has e-learning, so you can learn self-study and learn online through a learning road and download all the materials, but and then you have to buy the cheeses yourself. But we've had that, and that's increased, which has been fantastic, but we've had to learn how to go virtual as well. So before the pandemic, how was the American cheese market looking? What was great about it? And obviously you've seen since 20 odd years now, maybe more, is it, these artisan producers coming around. And how did that happen? Why did they decide?
Well, I think it really took off in the early 80s when Laura Chanel, a Californian who kind of launched goat cheese in the US, French style goat cheese. She was so successful that it got a lot of other people interested in getting into the business. And so there was a period of kind of slow growth through the 80s. And then in the 90s, I think it really took off. Americans, had traveled to Europe, had learned about the cheese course, the European style cheese course, and were just starting to embrace cheese more. And it's, I've watched it grow with the growth of the American Cheese Society is a really good marker, because I remember when the conference would, a bit like back in the late 90s, early 2000s, there would be maybe, I don't know, 150 people at the conference. And now there are a couple of thousand people at the conference and 1,500 cheese entries. So it felt very healthy, a very healthy industry. Of course, some creameries don't make it, but there were a lot of them that did and were thriving. And we'll see if they are able to.
When we were chatting, you were saying about the farmers markets. There was a new resurgence of farmers markets where the cheesemakers could actually sell their products as well, which made a big difference rather than trying to get it listed in a big supermarket.
Yeah, that's certainly has been a phenomenon, I would say, the last 20 years, that as farmers markets have grown in American communities, and these days almost every town of any size has a farmers market, if not multiple. It's a great way for small creameries to get started. Low barriers to entry, low cost. They get feedback from consumers very quickly. They make the retail dollar, which is nice. So it's been, that has been a good way in for a lot of creameries. One challenge, Tracey, is that the distribution channel has gotten tighter and tighter. We don't have enough small distributors who will take on the small creameries. They keep getting bought up or going out of business. So we now have mostly very large distributors. And if you're a small creamery just getting started, they're usually not that interested in you. No. So I think that's where the bottleneck is getting distribution for some of distribution into retail channels.
It must be really hard. I'm in no envy of how that works over there. So what trends have you seen in the recent years over in the States in terms of cheese making? Because we're going to talk tonight. So how it's going to work, guys, is Janet has selected 3 of her go-to artisan small producer cheeses that she loves, and I didn't have anything to do with that, but I've selected similar UK cheeses for our audience so they can taste along, comparable, and we'll talk about that. So what we're going to do is we'll do one cheese at a time and taste those with you. But I just wanted you to talk a little bit about, what trends have you seen in the US over the recent years? I mean, we both talked about previously when we've chatted about how lucky the UK, same in the US, because we're not, the cheesemakers aren't ruled by PDOs or PGIs, so they've taken lots of elements of different styles of the European cheeses, and then they can create these amazing cheeses from mixing up the styles and the washing and the milks and all of that.
I can think of 3 trends that I'd like to bring up quickly. One is not so great. It's a move away from raw milk. I don't have numbers on that, but I really sense that we have fewer and fewer creameries working with raw milk. And it's because the regulation in this country is just so
nightmare regulation.
So erratic. It's always changing. So if you develop a recipe for a raw milk cheese and then 2 years from now they change the standards, the microbiological standards, you may have to give up that cheese.
At the moment, to be able to sell a raw milk cheese in the US, it has to have been matured for
60 days. But it's sort of, that seems very clear cut and easy to deal with, but it's worse than that because sometimes they set these microbiological standards that are just impossible to meet. So even if you've aged the cheese 60 days, you might not meet the standards. So it's just in a state of flux, that regulation, and it's scary. So cheesemakers, I think, are moving away from it, unfortunately. That being said, we have 2 raw milk cheeses on our tray today. And another trend is, I would say, this move towards mixed milk. We're seeing not a flood, but more mixed milk cheeses than we used to. And I think it's partly because we have very few sheep here. We do not have a good dairy sheep industry. So if somebody has a few sheep or can get a little bit of sheep's milk, they kind of stretch it out by mixing it with cow or goat's milk. It also brings the price down because the sheep's milk is so valuable. Goat's milk too is very pricey here. So by mixing it, you can play around with flavors. So there's that, like blending wine, you have some more possibilities creatively. But I think mostly it's from a cost standpoint that we're seeing more of these mixed milk cheeses. And the third trend that I think I'd love to highlight is this desire to give a cheese a sense of place, to make consumers know where it came from by putting something uniquely regional on it, like washing it with a local beer or with a local wine, or wrapping it with grape leaves if you're from a grape growing region. So I'm seeing a lot more of these kind of individual treatments that make a cheese stand out at the cheese counter visually, and also put a kind of a place stamp on it, a sense of terroir.
Cool. Yeah, we have. I think there's a lot of beer washing going on in this country as well, and you're right. It does give that sense of put a stamp of the place on it, as well as creating some interesting flavors, collaborating with another local business. So it gives it that story to tell as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and in fact, the cheese, I know you're familiar with the Rogue River Blue.
We are. So this is one of the cheeses that we study at level 2. So
and that they were really, I think, pioneers in, not the first, but certainly among the first to try to do that by wrapping that cheese. That cheese is wrapped in local grape leaves that are soaked in a pear spirit, a pear brandy that comes from that region. It's a great pear growing area as well. So that was their way of saying, this is our blue. This is uniquely our blue.
It is the most awesome cheese. Obviously, it was World Cheese Award champion last year in 2019, because obviously World Cheese Awards didn't happen in 2020. And I was lucky enough to be there and be one of the judges at that event at the World Cheese Awards in Bergamo. It was just phenomenal. It's a stunning cheese. I've tasted it many times. I've visited the Italian cheese festival, Bra, and tasted it there. Just stunning. So,
and you want to hear something funny?
Someone's asking in the chat if they can. It comes into the UK. So we import it when it's in season, and I think Neal's Yard Dairy and Fine Cheese Company and La Fromagerie had stock of it, but it just sold out immediately.
Well, here's a funny story that I learned after that award, after they won the competition. They make that cheese in 2 ways. They make a raw milk version and they make a pasteurized milk version because they wanted to sell it in Australia, and where you can only sell the pasteurized version. So when they were shipping the cheese for the competition, the owner told the guy in the warehouse, select a raw milk one. Well, he screwed up, and they sent a pasteurized milk version. So that's actually what won.
Yeah. which is fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, it's a stunning cheese, absolutely stunning, and it demands a very high price. I think it was rocking towards £100 a kilo, but it sells because it is very exciting. It is a level 2 cheese. It's in our cheese library, so all you level 2 students, you'll have to wait for the next batch to come round as well to get to taste it. Do you like it, Janet?
Yeah, I love it. You know, like any blue, I find that they are hard to ship. They are really subject to, you know, how well they're handled in shipment and how long they've been on a shelf. So, you know, I've had some over the hill pieces of Rogue River Blue and many other American blues that I know are better when you have them at the right point. But I think they really suffer in shipment.
Saying that, when I purchased some at Bra, the Italian festival, I was on a 6-month sabbatical touring Europe in my camper van, and this was a real treat. I just bought a little portion, put it in the fridge, in the camper van fridge, and then when we went to eat it, it was actually beautifully hand wrapped in wax paper and cheese paper, but underneath it was vac packed, and I was like, oh, didn't expect that. But like you say, it's a way of shipping it, keeping it. They were turning over quite a lot of cheese at that festival. So
there are some creameries here that are now, I mean, we all know that the cheeses that suffer the most are those beautiful bloomy rinds. If you're shipping it, we have a big country, and if we're shipping from the East Coast to the West Coast or vice versa, those cheeses are in transport for a long time, and they can really get brutalized. So there's a creamery in Vermont called Vermont Creamery that packages its soft bloomy rinds in clamshells and little plastic caves. And it is an added expense, but it really helps get the cheese to the consumer in much better shape.
Wow,
so,
what a good idea.
I think there are some innovations in packaging that are happening that they are there to protect the cheese and help it through that distribution channel so that it arrives in good condition.
Fantastic. But then, and also another reason why to buy local and keep it as close to home as possible. So shall we move on to your first cheese? Let me just share my screen again and see what.
So here's my tray. I have
lovely.
And they are all, as I said, they're from that iGourmet collection that's it's called Farmstead and Fabulous. So they're all Farmstead. All these people are making cheese with their own milk. And we'll start, they're all strong. They're all aged cheeses. And we're going to start with one. We don't have any soft cheese today. This is sheep cheese, raw milk from Minnesota. And do you want to show your map, Tracey?
Yeah, I'll get the map up, chaps, and we'll just quickly do this. Let me whiz through these. Here it is. Can you see that?
Not yet. There we go. Okay, so this is from Shepherd's Way Farms. That's what we call the Midwest, Minnesota. Very cold there. They have several hundred sheep, and they make they also buy some cow's milk for some mixed milk cheeses, but this is 100% raw milk. The name is Friesago, F-R-I-E-S, like Sam, A-G-O. And that's a blending of two words. The free, the F-R-I-E, is because of her Frisian sheep. And the ending is because she was kind of making an Asiago recipe. So don't think Basque. This is kind of a sheep milk Asiago. And look at what's on that rind. But the one I've got is not nearly so mold covered, but that orange rind, and I can see also in this sample, it's a little bit inside the paste. She was really freaked out, the cheesemaker, when this showed up. This cheese initially started out as, she put a coating on she did not allow a natural rind, she put a coating on it. Then she got a little more adventurous and went with the natural rind. And this kind of orange mold started showing up, and she got really freaked out, and she took it to a conference where a mold specialist was, a cheese mold guy, and he looked at it and he went, wow. And she thought, oh no, what have I got? And he said, that's beautiful. I had to write down the name because it's not a cheese mold that you see very often. It's Sporindonum acacia, and it is desirable. So if you find that on the outside of a cheese, it's not a bad thing. This cheese, I'm gonna take a little taste. I know it's very nutty, and it's aged, it's a uncooked curd, pressed wheel, brine, very firm.
What age is it?
It's going to be at least 3 months, but it's going to depend on what time of year you buy it.
Yeah.
This feels more than 3 months.
And it's their own milk, isn't it? It's their own
milk.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a real tragedy about 5-10 years into their cheese making, when they had really built up to have one of the largest sheep flocks in the US, dairy sheep. They had a fire, an arson fire, which was never solved. Their barn burned, they lost almost all their sheep, and they had to totally rebuild their business and their flock. So, which they did. And so she's back making cheese.
Fantastic.
The owner makes them all by hand. She's probably 55, and she's still in the creamery making cheese every day by hand. It's very tart, good acidity, and kind of a buttermilky kind of acidity.
We've got Spenwood, which is actually is really interesting on the names as well, because Spenwood, I think that's a good shot of it, is sheep's milk from Berkshire, from the Wigmore family. And the name again is 2 parts. It's Spencer Wood is where the creamery, their cheese making first started. I don't know if you know the Wigmores, Janet, but I knew them much more for when I sold cheese, when I had my own cheese shop. We used to sell Wigmore, which is named after the family, and Anne Wigmore, who set up the dairy. But she was inspired by a pecorino style cheese rather than the Asiago style. But they do look really similar, don't they?
They do. Yeah, they do. Same shape, roughly the same. Oh,
yeah.
That one has square edges. This is more kind of the classic Basque mold, the form. But it doesn't taste at all like a Basque cheese, and it's not quite as nutty as Spenwood, which I haven't had that often. But I remember Spenwood as being kind of having a little caramel note, and a rich nuttiness. This is more lactic.
It's got that kind of, I was tasting it earlier, and it's got this caramel up front, but then that very piquant finish, really spicy.
We don't get it anymore. I was looking back. I haven't had that cheese in years. But
a chat
I loved it when I did.
From Alison, who's one of our followers and our students. And she's saying, this is good. She's saying that Spenwood tastes like stewed apple.
Interesting. I wonder
I
what
like
that aroma compound is.
What I was expecting it one night, because I haven't tasted Spenwood for years, and so when I decided to use this, because I was looking at Berkswell as well, which is another very famous sheep's, and I ummed and ahed about whether to pick that, because Berkswell is from the village of Berkswell, and they have their own sheep, whereas Spenwood, Anne and her family who have come into the business, they buy in their sheep's milk. So what I love to see, what I admire when I look at a piece of cheese like this is, I don't know how well you can see it, but it's very uniform in color. Under the rind, you don't get all that darkening that you sometimes see in cheeses. There's just a tiny bit of darkening under the rind. Usually when I see a cheese that has like a 1/2 inch of dark, or I don't know, in centimeters,
You know, that darkness under the rind, that means to me that their aging room is probably a little too warm. I've been told that's the sign of that. So to see this uniform color is very,
so
you know, to me that's an A+.
How long has they been making that cheese for?
It's their signature cheese. So it's been it might have been the first cheese they started making, and they've been in business, I would say 23, 24 years.
Okay.
So, but there was that, you know, it was interrupted for this period where they had no milk, they had no sheep. So, but she's got, you know, 20 years under her belt with this cheese, and she's a very fine cheesemaker. She makes another one that's maybe my favorite of all the ones she makes. It's called Shepherd's Hope, and it's it's very fresh. It's like a feta would be on like day 5, but without as much salt. So it slices. It's very open. It has no rind. It's very white. It looks like feta, very moist, but it's not salty. And it's so fun for a fresh table cheese with.
Yeah. I think you've written about that in one of your blogs and done a recipe, because I remember that and thinking, wow, that sounds delicious. Maybe sort of a little bit ricotta style?
No, it's not. I mean, you know, it's sliceable, so it's not even like a ricotta salata. That's more dense and more salty. I mean, you can shave a ricotta salata or grate it. This cheese is too moist for that. I don't know how many, it's probably under 2 weeks old, and it's just such a fun style because nobody else I don't know anybody else doing anything like it in the US.
It sounds delicious. So what's the rennet on that one? Is she using vegetarian rennet or?
Yes, she is.
What's the sort of go-to in the States? Is it?
I would say very much it's non-animal rennet, because for a couple of reasons, maybe more, but it's much less expensive. The animal rennet is quite a bit more expensive. And then there are some vegetarians who pay attention to that, who will not buy a cheese if it was made with animal rennet. So
yeah. Okay. So a lot of the American cheeses are made with vegetarian rennet.
Yes, they are.
I'm quite loving at the moment in the UK. One of the there's a few new cheesemakers coming in, and they're using the thistle rennet. So the cardoon, and that's fantastic, just stunning. So I'm hoping more and more of those come through as well.
Yeah. So are they mostly like very kind of Portuguese style, soft and creamy?
Yeah, soft, and it's sort of oozy and very Portuguese style. But it's interesting to see how that will progress. We're watching that one.
Yeah,
very much so. Watching it. I think. It's great because both of these cheeses have been, the Europeans will have their, woohoo, because they have both been influenced by European cheeses, haven't they? Yours by the Friesago and mine by the by the Pecorino.
Well, the U.S. is this, as you know, we're the country of immigrants, and so many of the early immigrants to the U.S. were from dairy countries. They were from the Switzerland or Italy, in that like northeast part of Italy, or the Canton Ticino in Switzerland. They were from dairying parts of Italy or Switzerland. Some Portuguese immigrants we have, and they brought, and a lot of Southern Italian immigrants. So they brought their cheese making traditions with them. It's the one thing they knew how to do when they got here. And they settled in dairy country, and they started making things that were like Parmigiano Reggiano, like Asiago. And of course now, they still make them. And we have this huge debate about about names, and whether it's, can you call your cheese Asiago? Can you call your cheese?
Yeah. And then you get your big fat USA lawyer bill, and you change the name completely.
But that's where a lot of our cheese traditions came from. So like Wisconsin, which is a major dairy and cheese making state in the US, near Minnesota, where this is made. Many of the immigrants were Swiss, Italian, German, and so we have those kinds of cheese traditions in Wisconsin.
It's fantastic. I mean, still in this country, in the UK, cheddar is the biggest seller. Cheddar, and we're going to taste the next cheese. I think we were going to go for. You've got Tumbleweed, and I've got Hafod. Is it a cheddar styles?
Obviously, doesn't look much like a cheddar on the rind or the shape. This is from New York State.
Yeah.
Again, a farmstead cheese. Do you want to show the map again?
Yeah, I'll get the map back up. So the map is. So this is this
5-spoke creamery? Yeah, there's New York.
Oh wow!
Maybe a couple of hours from New York City.
Yeah,
and actually less. Anyway, it's a family-owned farmstead. They have cows. I think only cows, and I'm pretty sure they're Holsteins. Grass-fed. This is raw milk, and it's it's just a hybrid style. It is. There it is. So you can see it has a natural rind on it, and you can kind of see from the paste that it sort of looks cheddar color, but the shape, it's made in a big, a 10-pound block, 10-pound, like 5 kilo, 4.5 kilo block.
Okay.
Like a cube. And then he puts this natural rind on it. And often you get a lot of white bloom on it. And he would say, the cheesemaker, Alan Glestoff, would say that it's a kind of a cross between a cheddar and a Comtal, which are related processes.
Yeah.
So, I don't know much more than that about it, is that he does start off with a cheddar recipe. So I'm pretty sure that the curd is cheddar, and it has an acidity that makes you, think of cheddar, but then he puts it in this unique shape.
And how does he mature it? So it's not cloth bound then, because it's in a...
No, it's not cloth bound.
No.
So I think it's just, aging on, I presume, wooden shelves. I should go look. There are pictures. I know on his site there are some pictures. I'm pretty sure.
To get the rind and the mold for those molds to develop. It's definitely not vac packed.
But you can see, let me see if I can get, I can show you how it breaks. It breaks like a cheddar.
Just hold that right up to your camera, Janet.
Yeah. You can see, it's breaking. It would not slice really well. It breaks in these cheddar-like
like a nice artisan cheddar.
Alice will put it smells like a cheddar.
Alice has my right-hand woman has got the websites ready, I think, to put up of your cheese makers, so that people can go and read a little bit more or see some more photos. And so, do you know where the name Tumbleweed came from? I love that. It's like we should be in a spaghetti restaurant.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I know where the creamery name comes from. 5-spoke as a reference to a bicycle. The guy is an avid cyclist, and he wanted to name it for that. Tumbleweed is more a term that we associated with the Western U.S., the desert. It's not something I associate with New York at all. So I don't know why he calls it tumbleweed, but he's a very environmentally conscious cheesemaker. I think the whole creamery is powered by solar panels, and he was an early adopter in that. Again, grass-fed, pasture-raised cows, and he's really an environmental leader in his creamery.
That's fantastic, because that really relates to Hafod, which I'm going to show you in a minute. So in terms of how he would sell that cheese, where he would sell that in some of those amazing New York cheese shops, maybe?
In the good old days, pre-COVID, I would see it here in California. So it goes to a distributor, and a distributor then has salespeople all over the country that place it in retail shops. So, it's certainly going to be more widely available on the East Coast than where I live on the West, but I was seeing it, and it's a very reasonably priced cheese. So that's another thing I really admire about it. Raw milk, farmstead and reasonable. You don't see that too often.
They don't come together, do they, often?
Yeah. So yeah, this first one, the Friesago, is probably almost twice the price per pound as.
Okay. And how's it tasting?
To me, it's very cheddar-like. It's got that kind of waxy, creamy texture. It's got that beautiful cheddar tartness, tang. It's not super, it's not biting. It's a pretty mellow cheddar, which is the style in the US for the most part, is to make a kind of more gentle, sweet cheddar. It's
fantastic.
It's
really interesting because I read very, very briefly, because I was so short on time, on the cheeses, and then trying to pick the comparable British cheeses for us to taste alongside. So I've gone with Hafod, which is made up in West Wales. This is a cheddar style. Patrick Holden, who owns the farm, and it's an organic farm, it's all his own cow's milk. He is an environmental campaigner, absolutely out there. He reminds me, he's like a male version of Mary Quick, because he knows so much about the pasture and the cows and the soil and everything with the solar panels, like you've been saying. And then his son, Sam, came back to the farm, and they started to make cheese in 2007. And sadly, Sam's gone on to do to new pastures, to go and do other things. But they've set up the creamery now, and they make this cheese. Now, they've just gone from, they work quite closely with Neal's Yard Dairy as well, but they've just gone from cloth binding the cheese for during maturation to just leaving the rind to mature, which is still part of an experiment. So when I tasted this, probably I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, it's very buttery. You can see it's very, very yellow, but I tasted it, and it was almost, rather than the very hard, like you said, waxy cheddar, it was melt in the mouth. It was very moist and a lot of a loose texture. I think the maturing now, without the cloth binding, it's gone, and I'm not sure how much further Neal's Yard Dairy have matured it on, but it is a lot drier and crumbly. Still with that lovely moisture, though, deep down, but not as moist, melt in the mouth as it was. So to me, it's got more of a cheddar style. They've just got 75 cows that they make this with. They're Ayrshire cows. They're in West Wales. So very, very lush pastures, loads of rain in Wales.
I love that cheese. I've had it maybe twice. Something happened with British cheeses here. We used to get them. We used to get Neal's Yard Dairy cheeses. Neal's Yard Dairy had a rep here, a representative that was out retailers, and I don't see them hardly at all anymore. It's sad. I see very few of them, and I think it has to do with price primarily.
Yeah, price, and then there's a lot of I think there's a lot going on with the tariffs. The tariffs didn't help. I don't know heaps about that, but we can find more information if people are interested. It has been really hard. I know that Neal's Yard are selling to people like Murray's and Whole Foods.
Yeah, but they don't buy that much. They usually have Montgomery's and
but Hafod, no, I think it's one of the ones. So they've with COVID as well, Janet. Everybody minimized their ranges, didn't they? They concentrated, and like you say, a lot of them went to the hard cheeses, so the blues and the soft were really struggling. That is absolutely beautiful tonight, actually. It's really interesting because there is almost a tang of eucalyptus herbs in there. I don't know if anybody who's in the chat who's tasting, if they managed to get hold of Hafod, that we've got quite a few Welsh because it's from West Wales. We've got quite a few Welsh really good online distributors now, which is fantastic. So I'm hoping that they've managed to get some, but it's got a fantastic herby eucalyptus tang to it, which is, and then it tingles on your tongue, really tingly on the tongue. Fantastic cheese and great comparison, really. So I should say that Hafod means summer place or pasture, which is a nice romantic
I wish we could have had the care package, so I had yours and you had mine.
Yes, we
to taste.
plan a long way in advance, I think, and then wait to get through customs, which is more tricky indeed. So if I share my screen, are you happy to go on to the next cheese?
You bet. My stinker.
Oh yeah, we're at we've got 8 minutes to go, so let me just this is actually I'm excited to try these, so and hear all about it. I'm just going to go back to your map so we can see. This one is Meadow Creek Dairy.
This is Meadow Creek Dairy from Virginia. Now this is in the Appalachian Mountains, and in very high elevation. I think it's like 3,000 feet, whatever that is for you, 1,000 meters.
We do feet. We do feet.
Oh, okay.
We do feet. We don't do pounds and ounces so much unless you're my age.
Well, it's a high elevation cheese. Again, farmstead and raw milk, family owned. Let's get that. Yeah, there it is. So the reason why I knew I had to serve this is because the cheesemaker, her name is Helen Feet with an E on the end, F-A-E-T-E. She was inspired by Durrus. She and her husband, I think, came to Wales and Ireland in maybe 20, 25 years ago. And she did a little, brief apprenticeship at Durrus and fell in love with the cheese and came back and tried to make it. And it initially was not that successful. So she finally, she went to Italy, she studied taleggio, and she decided that taleggio shape was working better for her. So she bought taleggio molds, and she now makes this cheese in a square, cow's milk. Again, she only makes it when the cows are on pasture. So she stopped making in early November. So this cheese, well, it's always at least 60 days because it's raw milk, but we know it's older than that because the last batch she made was in early November. Yeah. It's really a stinker, and it's very sticky, and she does use bee linens. She adds it, and she adds some yeast to her wash as well. I don't know details of that, but it's brine with bacteria and yeast added, and it's I'm going to cut into it.
So it's probably, so do you think that was made from the last batch then in November? So
not necessarily. This could be even a little bit old. It could be 3 months old.
Yeah, 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah.
It's holding up perfectly. It's not like proteolized at all. So no. I don't think it's super old.
Durrus is 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, we know this is a little bit older, but this is also a bigger. How big is Durrus?
I think they're smaller cheeses, aren't they? I'm not sure.
Yeah, this is a 2 kilo.
I've got a quarter of Durrus here, so that's a quarter.
Okay. So yeah, this is 2 kilos.
I love that you've gone for loads of square cheeses tonight. Have you got a thing about squares?
I know. I have no clue where well, this is a taleggio mold. I have no clue. The other one is a cube, really a cube. So I don't know where he gets that form.
Yes,
but this is smelling
little round cheeses and truffles.
Hugely aromatic, very beefy, garlicky. The dirty sock smells, the baby burp smells, all that is here, cabbagey. But I love it. It is filling the room. It is filling my kitchen with this smell, and you can see how beautiful it is. This beautiful thin rind, absolutely even. And the paste is no eyes, no openings in the paste. It's very, very fudgy, yeasty smelling. It's very, oh wow, just mouth filling, dense, and that kind of slightly sticky texture.
And this is and Grayson is this and it's a lady cheesemaker as well.
Yeah, I think she's passed it on. She has several children, Helen does. She and her husband have, I know they have a daughter that's involved, I think more on a marketing side. So I don't know that Helen, Helen might be my age, or a little younger. I don't know that she's still actively got her hands in the vat, but
Okay.
it is it's a
But
small
she started,
operation.
she was the instigator of Grayson.
She's still, still involved. Her husband, I think, looks after the animals, and she's in charge of the creamery. Wow, it's intense. There are going to be people who don't like it because it's like a lot of people don't like strong, smelly cheeses. That's what this is, and it's modeled after, as we know, Taleggio, Munster, Durrus, that whole washed rind category where you get these protein breakdown aromas that are sulfury. That's, they're sulfury.
But often the flavors aren't as strong as the smells, are they? So
I would say that's true often, but here this is very robust in flavor.
And lots of brothy. People are
Very.
asking. People are asking for recommendations of descriptions from our flavor wheel, which brothy is one of our descriptions that we use at the academy.
Mustard, I get,
wow.
I just call them sulfur compounds, things like mustard family vegetables like cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower. I get an aged beef smell, beef broth. But that smell, that's what happens when protein breaks down. That's where the aroma is coming from.
That's fantastic. And like I love the fact that they've used Taleggio, I can't get my words out now, Taleggio molds, a Taleggio mold to make that cheese, but in the style of, she was inspired by Jeffa Gill at Durrus and her visit. And
do you say Jill or Gill?
I would say Gill.
Gill, okay.
Yeah, we do have an English Christian name, Jill, and it could be with a J or a G. So I'm not sure. I've not actually met Jeffa, so I need to be corrected on that by our lovely Avrils in the audience. I think. So
well, it was interesting to me to hear how important that shape was. That she really didn't figure out the cheese. She really didn't nail the recipe until she got the right form for it. It wasn't working well with her recipe and her methods in the small format. So, shape is really important in how a cheese ages. It's a very important choice that the cheesemaker makes. As in fish, gill. Thank you, gill.
Gill.
Now we know.
So I thought that we've got heaps of washed drying cheeses in the UK, but I couldn't not do Durrus when and in Ireland. I know obviously it's an Irish cheese, but we love our Irish cousins just across the water there. And this is a fantastic cheese. I've sold and known this cheese for many years. I'm looking down at it. I need to show you guys. Sorry, I've really badly cut that, but my knife was not in the best position. So Alison has kindly come up with, so this would have been cut from a 1.4 kilo round wheel, but they do baby ones at 360. But I'm very much with you on, I like a slice of cheese from a bigger cheese, because I think the flavors are much better and much more evenly distributed. Sometimes you lose some of that complexity in a just a small little round, especially with blue cheeses. So I think you can see, unlike your Grayson, this has got quite a lot of holes. Yours is more smooth, isn't it?
Totally. Yeah. Totally.
And quite springy. It's washed in brine, just brine. It's pasteurized. It's animal rennet. We're still going for it over here. I know that Neal's Yard actually do still export this to the States because it is pasteurized, so they do all right with it. And Jeffa set this up. She was a fashion designer, textiles, and got hooked by, like many of us. I was in textiles in Northern Ireland, in fact, but she got hooked by like many of us, into the cheese game, cheese bug, and set up her cheese making, and that was back in 1979. So she's got another 20 years on your Grayson maker. But I was tasting this, and there's a very interesting, it's still got that beefy, brothy, but also white chocolate, this chocolatey tang. I don't know if you get that with the Grayson, or if it's too strong.
No, that's, at least it's not something that comes to mind for me.
It's almost like cocoa. So you get cocoa. So no, do you have cocoa, like drinking chocolate, hot chocolate in the US? It's similar to that. Very sticky, but very smoky on the paste. So almost like bonfire. I don't think this is as brothy and as meaty as yours. It's more yogurty. But again, it's 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, this is a more robust piece of Grayson than I've had even in the recent past. So maybe it is a little bit older.
It's delicious.
Developing more aroma. And also because it came, it's been in cryovac, in a vacuum bag. So I don't think that helps. But it's in good condition. It's looking really nice.
It looks beautiful. I love that. I just love the colors. The oranges and the deep.
Yeah, and it's quite, the paste is really quite yellow from the grass.
Yeah. So would you, with your, just quickly, because we're 7:03 here, 7 p.m. just over, quickly, with your recipe hat on, I would love to use that in a as raclette style, so melted over potatoes, or in a tartiflette. Or how would you cook with your Grayson?
Yeah, I don't tend to cook too much with these cheeses because they're so costly. But if I were to do something with it, I would love to take cheeses in this style and put them on top of polenta, especially at this time of year when it's cold. So, I'll make a big slab of creamy polenta, and while the polenta's hot, I'll just put slices on top, and it melts into the polenta. So, to be quite honest, I'm probably going to just finish this off just as a table cheese. So I get the best experience of its aroma and its taste.
I agree totally, because there's no point in cooking them. They're just so beautiful, aren't they? The Artisan farmstead makers. So we're going to have to close. I think, Alice, did we have any questions? I think we've answered most of them in the chat. We were obviously covering lots of stuff for people to learn about. They must go to your website, janetfletcher.com.
Feel free to email me. There's a contact form on my website, janetfletcher.com. Would love to, always like to stay in touch with cheese people.
We've got lots of American cheeses coming up at level 3, and Janet's been helping us decide which ones we'd like to add to the cheese library and to study at level 3. I hope that it's been a interesting sort of insight into American cheese, and that there is some absolutely amazing cheeses out there in America. The one thing that we were saying was that before the dreaded COVID and pandemic and lockdowns, there was that thing of cheese tourism in the United States, wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of we're such a big country, so a lot of the regions would form guilds. There's a California guild, there's a Vermont guild, and the producers would then jointly educate each other, share, technically, but also do marketing programs together, and often might have a festival in the summer that would bring people to Vermont or to California to celebrate the region's cheeses. So I think that's a great thing, and it will resume, I know, when we get to the other side of this. And we're all going to be so hungry for cheese and for travel. So please come see us.
Well, we want to be invited, please, or we need to be told
Wait for an invite.
when they're coming, and we would love to invite you back as well to the UK and Ireland, and to visit some of our cheesemakers. So watch this space, guys. Well, as soon as this is over, we're going to start cheese tourism big time, aren't we? And
For sure.
and make sure we get to actually meet each other in person. But you've been amazing. Thank you so much. It's
been my pleasure, Tracey. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Not at all. So thank you ever so much. Avril's put up some information there about Board B, about Irish cheeses as well. Do check out the American Cheese Society website, is excellent as well, isn't it, for information about American cheese. But I go and enjoy the rest of your day, Janet, and thank you to your husband for sorting out some of the tech. And I hope everything goes calmly for the rest of the day.
Thank you so much. Same to you.
Take care. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.